My name is James Solway. I'm now 60 years old, and I'm going to tell you a story which is mostly factual. And I say mostly factual due to the fact that I can't remember everything, but everything I'm going to say in my version of a talking book is my life in the London Ambulance Service. How I got to become a member of the London Ambulance Service, and my life in times as an EMT during the 1990s to early 2000s. I get to join the London Ambulance Service. Well, I have to go back to when I was in the Traffic Warden Service, or even further than that. But I will briefly say, when I left school, I didn't have any qualifications to speak of, and I started working for my uncle, who was the manager of the parts department at Thrives of Lewisham, which was a Ford parts and sales shop, shall we say, owned by Ford, or a franchise of Ford, if that's the correct term, selling parts and cars in Lewisham. It was up Lee Eye Road, and it isn't there anymore. There's a block of flats and some shops there now. But I started working at age 18 for my uncle, working in the parts department, or goods inwards. And I did that for about 5 years. Really boring work, giving deliveries of parts to be sold by the sales guys. I had a pretty good time. I learnt to stand up for myself at working for Fry's, and my uncle was a tough manager, my Uncle Dom, and he taught me to stand up on my own 2 feet, literally. But after about 5 years, up to about 1982, let me up with working for Ford and working for the parts department at Fry's and counting switches and headlights. I wanted something else, but couldn't think what that would be. Well, yeah, one night my father was a police sergeant in the traffic division of the Metropolitan Police, threw me a application to become a traffic warden, and I went, yeah, I'll have a go at that. Now, everyone hates traffic wardens, especially then, but I didn't really care about that. I thought this was a step up, that it might be a stepping stone to join in the police, because I actually attempted to join the police when I was 19, but the police turned me down because I simply wasn't heavy enough for my height, which is fair enough, because the Metropolitan Police then had strict standards for police officers, male and female, and I just wasn't heavy enough to take the kicks and punches of being a police officer, plus all the other arduous work. I probably could run 100 yards without a problem, but I just didn't meet the standards there, so I actually gave up on attempting to be a police officer, and I'm not sure if I could be a good police officer or not. Well, yeah, I joined the Traffic Warden Service, the Metropolitan Police Traffic Warden Service, I might add, and my first posting was at Camberwell Police Station, up Camberwell Road in South London, and I enjoyed that immensely, would you believe? And anyone who's going, oh, he was a traffic warden, if you've not been a traffic warden, you wouldn't know what you're talking about, because as far as I'm concerned, it was completely different to what I thought it'd be. It was issuing fines for illegal parking, but it was other stuff. We did a lot of traffic control, and mornings and afternoons, my unit was responsible for a school crossing point, so everyone had to man, or whichever relief that was on duty in the afternoon or in the mornings, command, shall we say, that crossing point, and that was quite exciting, directing traffic, quite interesting. It was quite an art, actually. It was the sort of thing police officers used to do, but of course, being a police officer, you don't want to end up directing traffic all the time, so the Traffic Warden Service was invented. I mean, police officers didn't want to do parking tickets all the time. They wanted to patrol the streets. So there you have it in a nutshell. I spent a few years from 1980, 82, 83, 84, 85, 86, the traffic warden service at that time. By 1986, my father retired from the Metropolitan Police and had bought a bungalow in Dorset. So we moved down to Dorset. I was quite upset about that, actually, because I'd already joined the Territorial Army and was training as a combat medical technician 3. To be quite honest, later on in life I tried the TA again, or the Reserve Forces, and I didn't really have the time to actually complete the training, because of the armoured service didn't really like you doing anything else other than being in the armoured service. And when I joined the TA the first time at Berganza Street, the Royal Army Medical Corps, it was the Royal Army Medical Corps 217 HQ, and I was trained as a CMT 3 then. I had to abruptly end that because my father wanted to move to Dorset. I spent 6 months in Dorset. I couldn't get any work. I tried becoming a traffic warden, but I didn't have any qualifications. I didn't have any money to attempt to get qualifications, so I decided to leave home and become a traffic warden again. And my second time around, I was actually at my father's old police unit, South East Area Traffic Unit in Catford, South London. Excuse me. Under the watchful eye of Elsie Elborn, bless her, my traffic warden controller, who, as far as I'm concerned, was a complete bully. I did from the end of 1986 to October 1988 at South East Area Traffic Unit. And because of people like Elsie in the traffic warden unit, I decided I needed to move on to find something a little bit better than being a traffic warden. Well, after a couple of interviews with my traffic warden controller Elsie about the fact that I wasn't putting in enough tickets compared with my female colleagues, of all things, who were bringing in wads of 30 or 40 and 50 tickets a day, I was bringing in 6 or 7 tickets a day. Now, the traffic warden service isn't keyed on how many tickets you bring in. It's about the presence of a traffic warden on the high street. You see a traffic warden, you're not going to park in front of a traffic warden unless you're an idiot. And see, as far as I'm concerned, was an arsehole. I got fed up with Elsie's attitude. I was looking for another job. I was also involved with a girl who was also at my unit. That we got married. My first marriage was a shit pit of pain. But that's life. I had applied to become a outpatients driver for the London Ambulance Service without actually receiving any acknowledgement. One Thursday afternoon, I came into the traffic warden unit and I resigned on the spot. Now, I didn't know at the time there's a traffic warden senior controller who was the boss over Elsie, my boss. And she came down because somebody went upstairs and said, James leaving, we don't want James to leave, and that sort of thing, because I lost my temper, I was in a mood. And she came down and says, I understand why you're leaving. I think you may be leaving abruptly because we can get things sorted out. I said, I don't know how. Elsie's got the rein on this, a leash on this traffic warden unit, and I am a target of wrath. I mentioned that I put in my pocketbooks all the interviews, including the fact that she wasn't happy I was only bringing in 7 to 10 tickets a day and not 50. I'll tell you a quick story about that in a moment. In any case, I did my 728, which was a memorandum, Metropolitan Police memorandum, stating why I was leaving. Packed up all my uniform and just left. That is it. No notice, no nothing. Within 2 weeks of that, I was actually at a training, my first day of training in the London Ambulance Service. So it worked out that way. I wasn't going to be unemployed for too long. Yeah, I joined the London Ambulance Service in November 1988. Coincidentally, this is sort of like a talking book, and the title of my book is November 6th, which has a significance. The the only station I served at for 21 years as a qualified ambulance person, I'll explain later, to EMT, was Forest Hill Ambulance Station, and its call sign was November 6. And I joined November 1988 as an outpatients driver. I enjoyed outpatients driving, looking after the elderly, because that's mostly who your patients were. We normally picked up the elderly for their day outpatients appointments. A lot of our patients went to day hospitals where they were monitored. Of course, the NHS was then. I don't know what happens now when it comes to day hospitals, but in them days you had day hospitals, and we picked up and took home the patients, or the elderly patients, from these day hospitals, including other appointments that they needed to attend. You did that every day, all week. It was pretty good. My training as a AP or ambulance person was basic first aid. My very first day in the London Ambulance Service, I thought, oh, am I doing the right thing? Because you have these answer question sessions in front of these super duper instructors, arrogant bastards they were. Some of them have only been in the ambulance service themselves a little while before becoming an instructor. As they say, if you can't do, teach. That's the old saying. Anyhow, I said I'd done first aid, or started to learn first aid in the Royal Army Medical Corps, and I was told immediately to unlearn all that, because the London Ambulance Service do things differently. Really? Up to the late 70s, the London Ambulance Service was learning first aid out of Sir John's first aid book, so I don't know what he meant by that. I was being trained as a combat medical technician 3 in a few years before, but neither here or there. So I spent from 1988 to 1990 as a AP, or ambulance person, just an outpatients driver. I had a bloody good time. And I found some photographs of me when I was in outpatients. So I joined the London Ambulance Service in 1988 as an ambulance driver, and I was quite content to do that, really. Becoming a QAP, or qualified ambulance person, you had to wait in line. You had to wait for vacancies to come up. And I'll tell you, my first attempt at being a QAP didn't go very well whatsoever. No, not at all. I applied, I think, about 1989 during the ambulance dispute of 1989-1990, and I shall tell you about that later on in my book, talking book, so to speak. But for the time being, I applied, passed to qualify for the training course, the QAP training course, which is Qualified Ambulance Person training course, which enabled you to work from blue light ambulances. Now, the first part of the QAP course is the driving side, which I was pretty good as a driver. My father taught me. Because he was obligated to teach all 3 sons driving techniques that you wouldn't normally learn in a normal driving tuition. And he taught us well, all 3 of us. I have 2 other brothers, both good drivers. If you're a good driver, you're a safe driver, and all that business. So, and in them days, there was a lot of fast driving in the saloon vehicle tests or driving courses. Then you went on to the heavier vehicles for your training for blue light training. They were the heavier vehicles were equipped with some ambulance equipment on board, plus blue light. I think they had blue lights on. I'm not sure. I think they had blue lights, and you would drive around every day for 2 weeks. learning to handle the vehicles in different weathers, using the police system of driving. Now, to cut a long story short, you have to do a night drive. I'm not sure why, but you have to do a night drive to see if you could actually accomplish driving at night in any weather that's you encounter on the night drive. And I was up for driving, and I think we drove to Brighton because the instructors had a favourite hamburger bar to go to, so they would all drive down to Brighton on this particular evening. We started about 10 o'clock, I think, and ended about 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning. I think it was a Thursday or a Friday of the first week. And I'm driving along, and part of police driving system, the advanced driving system, you have to do a running commentary when you're driving. But it wasn't necessary for the ambulance service to do a running commentary, and doing a running commentary takes practice. It really does. We had to describe the road surface, signs we passed, what I'm doing with the accelerator and the braking and the steering. I did that for about 20 minutes on my way down to Brighton, when I asked the instructor if I can stop the running commentary because I need to actually concentrate. Now, when you're driving, you're not supposed to do anything else but drive the motor vehicle, nothing else. So I asked my instructor, Bob Bates was his name, and excuse me, I'll try and edit those out, those little coughs. Bob Bates was asked by me if I can end the running commentary and just drive the vehicle down. Not going fast, it wasn't going fast. And he said, yes, okay then. And then a few moments later he asked me to pull in to a lay-by, which I did. I knew I was in trouble. Sorry, I've just tapped the table, the microphone's on. I knew I was in trouble, pulled into the lay-by. He turned his little swivel chair around to face me and said, who's the instructor? I said, you are, sir. And who's the pupil? I am. When I say, he said, we stop the running commentary, then we stop the running commentary. I knew that I was up shit creek without a paddle from then on. When we drove down to Brighton. On the way back, I was sat in the back, stewing, as they say. I was thinking of what's going to be going on now. And stewing's a term where you're just sitting there thinking, what's going to be said when we get back. When we got back to Waterloo HQ, which was also the training centre for QAP training, I was taken to the office and I was told to come off the training course because I was disrespectful to an instructor, which I wasn't, and I was to do a memorandum writing some bullshit saying that I have to come off the training course because I got family problems at home. That memo's probably been destroyed by now, and I wish I had a copy of it. But I was bullied into coming off the QAP course, my first one, simply because I asked if I could stop the running commentary, which I found out years later was not necessary for ambulance skill driving. The skill for driving an ambulance, emergency ambulance, did not require a running commentary. In fact, it's quite a distraction. When you're talking and driving at the same time, it's quite dangerous. Anyhow, I had to come off my first QAP course. So, coming off QAP course because I asked an instructor if I could stop a running commentary, which wasn't necessary for driving skills in London Ambulance Service, or any ambulance service for that matter. Informed me that London Ambulance Service was an arrogant bunch of arseholes who were up their own arse at that point. Anyhow, I went back to being an ambulance driver, ambulance person, or AP. And at that time, the same time as my first QAP course, we were in dispute with London Ambulance. Now, everyone calls it a strike. It wasn't an ambulance strike. In 1989, the ambulance service, or London Ambulance Service, actually suspended every member of the ambulance service because of some dispute over equipment. The original agreement for new equipment was to be paid a certain amount of money for operating that new equipment. That was a means of getting an extra bit of money in your salary, which, as far as I'm concerned, is fair enough. I'm not pushing the broom without being paid for it, as they say. So we were the London Ambulance Service suspended all staff. So it wasn't a strike. We were suspended from duty, and the government had to call in the army and other ambulance services. I don't know if the Red Cross and the St John's Ambulance took over our 999 calls. Quite a complicated part of London Ambulance history, and it's claimed that we nearly brought down the Thatcher government because of it. So we wasn't on strike. We didn't strike. We were just told we couldn't report on duty anymore. So quickly, the A&E stations around London took up the role of managing their own A&E calls, and we quickly advertised out in the local community to dial the numbers of the stations to get a 999 call and not go through Central Ambulance Controls. It was there, or CAC. The dispute ended in 1990, and near the end of 1990 I applied again to become a QAP. This time I was successful. So there you are. So far, that's how I joined the ambulance service. I should get some insight into my life as a qualified ambulance person who became an EMT in London Ambulance between 1991 and 2012. Everything you'll hear from me is the truth, and if I can't remember, I will say I can't remember that, or I can't remember this, and we'll go on from there. I'll end with my very first call, a 999 call, unsupervised. Because when you completed your training, you had to be supervised for 4 weeks. Mine was only 3 weeks because the instructor went off. The instructor that me and my colleague had went off and did another course. So we were released to a ambulance on duty after just 3 weeks and not 4 weeks. So there we are. My first emergency call unsupervised was on a Thursday evening, I think, or was it? Yeah, about a Thursday evening, because you have a couple of days off, and then I did my first night shift at Waterloo Ambulance Station, which is the HQ of London Ambulance Service. I did 11 till 7. It wasn't until about 11:30 when the crew from the mid shift, the afternoon shift, arrived. They shouted out, these two mature chaps, that the ambulance was okay. Turned out it wasn't. It was full of chip paper and oxygen bottle, empty oxygen bottles, etc. While I'm fitting out the ambulance with fresh oxygen, my colleague took a call. And in them days, especially in my day, shall we say, all ambulance stations have gongs, so when the phone goes off, if you're somewhere else away from the phone, you can still hear the phone ringing because there's these big clackers that go off. My colleague took the call, came rushing out into the garage where I was re-equipping our ambulance, which was November 301, N301, and said we got a baby in the Thames. A baby's been thrown into the Thames. So we shut up everything, grabbed our equipment quickly. I drove the ambulance out into the road, which was Pierman Road, I do believe, outside Waterloo Ambulance Station. My colleague shut the shutters, because you have to secure the ambulance station, especially when you're the only crew on. It couldn't be left open. My colleague then jumped into what's known as the attendant seat, which is the passenger seat alongside the driver, and we sped off down to Tower Bridge, where the incident had taken place. Well, I knew where I was going quite a lot of the time, because if you did outpatients work, you'd get to know the routes around London. So I knew exactly where to go. Didn't need a map book in them days, because in them days you had a map book to get your locations and routes. So I sped down to Tower Bridge, doing 50, 60 mile an hour through the streets of London, from Waterloo Ambulance Station to the south side of Tower Bridge. We screeched to a halt, almost literally. You have to come to a walk very quickly. Blue lights are still flashing. The blue lights was two big blue lights at one corner and another. And I got out. We grabbed some first aid, and we run down the embankment as it was then. It isn't like that now. It's all changed now up at the south side of Tower Bridge. To be met by two security guards coming the other way. I think one of them was Italian. He was in the Italian army. And two security guards was for the newly opened London Tower Bridge Museum. And one of them was holding a little baby. Then the security guards had heard an argument out on the bridge itself, while they was having a quick fag, a quick smoke. And they see something thrown into the river where they were standing, and the Italian guy stripped down to his waist, took his shoes off and dove straight in, and he managed to grab a baby that had gone under the water. Sadly, the baby had drowned, and we was running down, they were running up. My colleague Paul, who was his name, grabbed the baby, and we went running back to the ambulance to see if we can resuscitate this little baby of about 18 months. She was about 18 months old, little baby girl. So we go running up to the embankment, back towards the ambulance, and we try to resuscitate the little baby girl. Like I said, 18 months, been thrown into the Thames from about 40 feet into the water, freezing cold water. It was about the middle of March then. We couldn't find any equipment that was working. We tried to use suction, but the suction failed on us because it wasn't charged all afternoon. We had to scramble around for baby resus equipment because that wasn't in its particular locker. After being told by two mature chaps who had been in the ambulance for a little while that the ambulance was okay. That was the mentality of the London Ambulance Service at that time. Well, the mentality of some of the crews of London Ambulance at that time. So anyhow, that is a memory of mine I'll never forget. We tried to resuscitate the little baby. It wasn't working. We wasn't able to deliver oxygen correctly because we only had one bottle of oxygen on board. We couldn't find the tubing for the resuscitator, the little bag of masks that we used to try and get breaths into people. I shouted we'd just better go, and my colleague said yes. I totally agree, he said. Let's just go, he says. And by that time the police had turned up, two police carried, and a copper jumped on board my ambulance. I said, well, off to Guy's Hospital. Literally shouting at him. Well, not shouting, but the adrenaline's running. My colleague Paul was on a stretcher trying to resuscitate this baby. We don't know how long she was immersed in the water for, probably at least a couple of minutes. Excuse me. So I shut up all the doors, police officer strapped yourself in, I radioed through. In them days you had to push a button, the priority button. CAC or Central Ambulance Control came back straight away with what's your emergency or what's the blue call, which was the code. Blue call was the code for emergency ambulance into hospital on blue lights. I radioed back. I said, this is November 301. We have a young female, 18 months old, immersion water, query drowning, suspended breathing, ETA guys, 5 minutes. I got a read back from CSC. Roger, 18, young female, query drowning in the guys, 5 minutes. Roger, he went, and I went Roger back, hung up the radio, turned on the ambulance, sped it around in one swoop of a turn back towards Guy's Hospital, and we got in the Guy's Hospital in about 4 minutes. As carefully as possible, you got people in the back. When I arrived at Guy's Hospital, nobody there to meet us. When I pulled into the parking area, I accidentally hit the two-tones, which upset the nurses. They all come running out. I said, "What are you doing making all that noise?" I said, "That was an accident of my left foot. I was braking and hit the two-tone button, which was on the floor by the brake, accidentally." When they took the baby, they attempted CPR themselves for about 30-40 minutes. But the baby died. The baby died in the hospital. Well, technically speaking, the baby died when she hit the water at the Thames at Tower Bridge. I did a couple of police station statements just to say how we responded and what we did, and that was that. And that was my very first emergency call unsupervised at Waterloo Ambulance Station. And that is that for now. So there you are. I got part 1, part 2. That was part 1, part 2, part 3, part 4 onwards until I get to my retirement. So I hope you've been able to take on what I've said, that I'm clear. Please put in the comments if I'm not clear. I can redo these videos, excuse me, or re-edit them so they're clearer to listen to. All what I say is fact and the truth. I'm not making any of this up. And take it from there. Bye for now.